Hello and welcome to Dorks on Sports, a podcast about four dorks talking about sports. My name is Daniel. Joining me, as always, is the lovely Curtis Eastwood over there. How you doing, Curtis?
I'm doing well.
Yeah, you went to a major event here in the city of Seattle.
I went to a professional men's basketball game at the Climate Arena. The first one I've been to since the 2000 aughts.
I mean, that must be the first NBA game that's been in Seattle since the 2000 aughts. No,
we've had a couple.
They've had a few.
And they had a few
exhibition
preseasons
games.
Yeah,
but this one felt maybe a little bit more significant. Yeah.
I think the Sonics are kind of coming back sooner than we might think.
I get a little bit of a vibe.
I'm feeling the vibe. There was
a lot of former Sonic players and coaches there, and there were like the three major figureheads of the municipality of Seattle and the county of King and the state of Washington were all
that feels a little significant.
And most significantly, Macklemore was there.
Macklemore was there.
I didn't know Macklemore was still a thing.
But so Macklemore was kind of hyping up the crowd. But you know who really hyped up the crowd?
We'll move
out past this. No, it was Steve Ballmer.
Went
out there and did a hype speech thing that was just off the hook fun.
Does Steve Ballmer wanna own a piece of the new Seattle Supersonics?
He's not selling.
He's got the Clippers.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was.
Oh, does he own the Clippers? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
All these rich guys, they've all got something. As long as it's not like Elon Musk, I think I'm okay.
Yeah. As long as I get the Sonics back, I'm okay. It's like,
yeah. Alana, how are you doing over there?
I'm doing all right. It's Yom Kippur. My family's observing that today. And so I got a little private time tonight, which was nice.
That's nice.
Because Beth and Svea went to synagogue and I watched a couple of episodes of a high school TV show that I've just picked up. So
nice.
Yeah.
Are those new specs?
No, I just have 19 nice. Pairs of glasses. Thank you.
They're good. Yeah, I like them. And we're missing Millie today. Millie's on vacation, so we brought in a special guest star, Steven Stern, in his Saints sweater. How are you doing over there, Steven?
I'm doing fine. It's nice to be here with y'all. I've seen the show, but I am now delighted to have a chance to be on it, even though we're talking about something that's already making me nervous, the Saints Seahawks game.
Well, I'm excited to dive in. We're excited to have you. We always like having special guest dorks on the program. Do you play fantasy football at all, Steven?
I do not.
No, okay. Millie does, and I always like living vicariously through Millie's fantasy football because I'm terrible at it. So I checked in with Millie to see how she was doing. Not doing well. She did not do well. So, last week she said her husband was her nemesis, who apparently played Deebo Samuel and ran roughshod all over her. So we're thinking about you, Millie. You're in our thoughts and prayers, and we're sorry you lost that fantasy football team. Just dust off and you got next week. Speaking of football, I thought that last Seahawks game was a little bit of a fantasy myself. I think Geno Smith thought so. That must be the best game Geno Smith has ever played. What do you think, Curtis?
Yeah, I don't remember what he did when he was in New York. I think maybe he had a couple good games. I know he had a couple games over there where he threw over 300 yards and stuff. But that would have been one of the best games for Russell Wilson. To be
absolutely
honest. I mean, the efficiency numbers were crazy. I'm just really happy for him. It's through the first quarter of the season, he is, I believe, the second best efficiency passer in the league behind Allen from
Buffalo.
Yeah.
That's
saying
company.
something.
He's got the 5th best QBR in the league right now, ahead of the quarterback in Baltimore, and Josh Herbert or Justin Herbert, which is, that's high company. Prefaced it with we're only 4 games in, but he's looked that good. That's consistent production. It's not like he's having highs and lows. He's having mid games and great. I don't think Geno's had a bad game yet, which is, that's really good. Even that game against the Niners, he did what he could.
And if we recall what happened right after that game, Carroll came out in almost sort of a stunning fashion on Monday and said, we need to open it up more for Geno.
And what happened? He threw his 60-yard bomb to DK Metcalf.
Yeah.
The way DK got involved in that game was pretty cool. And then of course Tyler Lockett getting those numbers too. I don't know. I'm just so happy for Geno. He broke the record for the highest completion percentage through the first 4 games of the season. Yeah, that's just incredible.
I've been scouring all over line about stuff that's being posted, analytic stats that he's achieving right now, and it's pretty remarkable that a guy who has spent the last 5 years as a backup quarterback is putting up these kind of numbers.
Yeah,
for the first,
and getting a lot of attention from the national media. And I have to say, in large part, I think the O-line is protecting him really, really well. I think they're in the top 10 right now in pass block efficiency numbers.
Yep.
And the run game is getting going as it did last game. Alana, do you think this kind of offensive production is sustainable? They're 3rd in offensive DVOA right now. Again, it's only 4 games into the season, but that's really good.
I think it's sustainable because we know what we want to do and we're sticking to it, right? Like, it's interesting that the game plan has been to say that we're run, when actually we're not running very much, with the exception of this last game. So it'll be really interesting when we go up against another competent defense in New Orleans to see how that kind of plays out. I think this is entirely sustainable when you have a quarterback who's completing 77% of their passes. That's not something that is a flash in the pan, right? Like, if he was airing it out and completing like 63% of his passes, then I would have a little bit more worry about sustainability. But he fits so perfectly into Waldron's system. Like, it's a match made in heaven. For him to just step in there, and we've got 3 really good tight ends, and they're proving that they're all 3 really good.
And they're being used.
Uncle Will got another touchdown.
They're being used.
Yeah,
Uncle Will has 3. I think he leads the team in touchdowns right now.
That's crazy,
if I'm not mistaken. And I mean, he's a Montana kid, so I have a strong appreciation for him. But like, it's been. Y'all were talking before we started about how much fun this season had the possibility of being, because we had no expectations, and because we got rid of that clown. Who's proven to be an absolute clown over the course of the first 4 weeks of the year, and now we have somebody who just wants to show up and do the job, and that's wonderful. Like, and the other, I know I said this on an earlier podcast. The difference in the way that Geno and Russ dress for the game it's remarkable. Geno looks like he's stepping out of like an Italian joint with the red leather couches he looks really like that
like he had that
idea
purple suit. Oh,
yeah,
it was so
and
it
then
was
Russ
so
is
good.
wearing these like gold lame jackets
Right.
that are purple actually. He just and like a whole suit in that color. There's just a difference. It feels chintzy compared to what Geno's doing, which just feels like that real musky class.
Yeah.
And I just like that look so much more. And that makes me drawn more to Geno. So like will we the NFC is bad. Just straight up bad.
Just straight up awful.
Mm-hmm.
So will we be able to compete throughout the season? I think maybe, I mean, our defense blows whole, but we have a big weakness and we have a competent offense, and that's wonderful.
I think so too. And an offense that I think Geno just has a complete mastery over.
Yeah.
The audibles that he's calling at the lines and stuff. Mm-hmm. What was that, like 3rd 16? And he calls an audible and Rashad Penny gets the first down. Yeah. That's ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, that's he's carrying himself with a swagger that I haven't seen him carry before. There's just so much confidence in that.
I don't ever remember Russ audibling to the extent that Geno Smith has through these first 4 games.
Yeah.
Like Geno, I don't know. There was something that Rashad Penny had said in his post-game press conference when asked about Geno Smith. And it was really kind of sweet and lovely because he almost, I felt, kind of swelled up in the eyes a little bit and got a little, like, you could tell.
Yeah.
He loves Geno Smith.
Yeah.
And he said, like, something like, y'all don't understand what we've been seeing for the last
right
practices. Like he,
well, and they're not immune to what the media.
And he had to sort of correct himself and said, like, it's not like Russ didn't do this, but Geno just does all the little detail stuff. He does it consistently. And I think that I remember either seeing or hearing, possibly on the radio, when someone was talking about him, that Geno Smith is a super, super intense kind of football junkie. Like he's like a football nerd. For the last few years, as he's been sort of riding the pine behind Russ and Phillip Rivers and Eli Manning, he's sort of, I think, has sort of shifted his thinking into like, well, if I don't become a starter again, I'm going to be a head coach. So he's really become a student of the game, and I think it's showing up. I mean, I think it's showing up in these games by the way he's like reading defenses and seeing and making adjustments kind of on the fly. And one of the things that really super impressed me, I could spend this whole episode talking about how impressed I am with Geno Smith right now, but I won't. But
we have a guest, so we need to make sure.
I know, and we need to move on. But the one thing that I've been noticing lately is how deadly he is at the play action pass right now. And I didn't get as strong a sense of that last year when he subbed in for us in those games. It feels like that's something he's developed. So at 31 years of age, it feels like he's still finding his game. And that's super intriguing to me.
I love it. Yeah. I'm rooting for him, and if he ends up going to the Pro Bowl, man, that's a Cinderella story. Yeah. Not much I want to talk about the defense that we haven't talked about, but Tariq Woolen baiting that interception and taking it to the house for pick 6 was pretty dang exciting for a corner that young, and with that kind of upside. If he continues to develop his game like that, he can be one of the top cornerbacks in the league. And that's really, really, really exciting. So the Seahawks got the Saints next. I don't have a bead on this team. I mean, admittedly, I haven't watched a ton of Saints games this season, but I don't have a bead on this team. What can you tell me about the Saints, Stephen? What is this team doing this season? And are they contenders? Are they going to be competitive in the NFC?
Well, they're 1-3. But
Right.
nobody except the Eagles is better than 2-2. So anybody is a contender, right?
And
Yeah.
Dallas, apparently.
Is Dallas better than 2-2?
They're 3-1.
They're
I
3-1.
Really? Wow, that's a surprise. That won't last. Here's my bold prediction: Dallas is not going to last. No, the Saints have got a lot of problems. We don't know who's playing for the Saints this week. They've had the last 2 days off, so nobody has practiced yet. We don't know if Kamara's coming back. We don't know if Michael Thomas is coming back. No one said anything about which of the two quarterbacks is going to play quarterback this week. It's been a rough start for Dennis Allen, who is looking about like he did when he was the Jets head coach and didn't win any games.
Right.
Kind of questionable why they picked a defensive coach to take over for Sean Payton at a time that they were also trying to break in a new quarterback. You would think that maybe they would have hired one of the offensive assistant coaches who is available instead of promoting their own excellent defensive coordinator. So it's not unpredictable that what they have this year is a defense that's playing pretty well, penalties aside, and an offense that looks confused and lost most of the time. It's played.
I know. And you got like the Marcus Mariota, who is throwing more interceptions than touchdowns, except he's not throwing for like 5,000 yards a season. Like if you're, you know what I mean? Like,
Jameis
Winston. Yeah.
They came out of the same draft together.
Right. They did. And they kind of like flamed out together. But Winston is like, you know, he throws a lot of picks, but he also can air it out. He just airs it out. But so that's kind of what you get with him. But if he's throwing a bunch of picks and he's not airing it out, that's like the worst version of Winston.
But he's also really hurt. I mean, he's got 4 broken bones in his back and a foot injury.
God.
He had no business playing in the second or third week, but they played in the second week, I guess. Last week it was Dalton, and Dalton was better. He wasn't good enough to win, against Minnesota in London, but he was better. They showed some signs of life. They almost sent the game into overtime, but their 61-yard field goal double doinked off the crossbars, so they lost by a field goal. And as often happens with the Saints, they get a lot of penalties called on them. Some of them are legitimate, some of them are not. I think Seahawks fans have seen this too.
Yeah, we're used to that dance.
Yeah, so I don't know what's going to happen this week. I don't even know who's playing for the Saints this week, much less who's going to win the game.
It's weird to me that they played in London and don't get a bye week after, like, forcing a team like that kind of sucks. When we go into our predictions here, that's going to factor in my prediction. Is like having that kind of travel is crazy,
right? And they've taken 2 days off since then, and I understand why they want 2 days off, but it's now a short week of practice on the heels of a kind of a heartbreaking loss. Yeah. And they don't really know who's playing. So, the Seahawks offense looked great against Detroit. I watched part of that game. One thing y'all didn't mention is how well Geno Smith ran the ball on the
he was terrific,
under and ran. Very impressive. I haven't seen the Seahawks quarterback run that fast in quite a while. He ran at the right times and he ran really well. That's something that Winston, when he was playing with broken bones in his back, wasn't doing. He had opportunities to run, but he was throwing weak passes instead. So I think that you've got the strength of the Seahawks against the strength of the Saints. Seahawks offense, Saints defense.
Versus the defense, yeah.
And then the Saints offense, which has a ton of weapons if they can play, but no direction against the weakness of the Seahawks, which is a defense that looked pretty poor against the Lions. And the Lions aren't super great. So maybe we have a low-scoring game. Maybe we have a high-scoring game. Maybe the Seahawks blow us out. Maybe we blow the Seahawks out. I don't think we'll be blowing the Seahawks out. I'll just say I think it's probably going to be close, and someone's going to be frustrated to lose the game. That would be my guess, is that at the end of the game, the team that loses is going to think we could have won that.
Yeah. So what do you think? Go ahead, Curtis.
I was just going to say, I've been thinking about this a lot, with the sort of the polar opposites of the Seahawk offense versus the Seahawk defense this year. It feels like most of the Seahawk games this year are going to be like that. Like it's going
Yeah.
to come down to
Yes.
kind of like final possession type of scenarios oftentimes. And
Yeah.
I mean, even the Seahawks, when they were great during the LOB era, often came down to final possession. That's just Pete Carroll football.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the score will be a score that's never been done before. Did the Seahawks hold the record for scoregamis? I feel like they should.
I mean, like, I don't know that anybody's tracking that. But I believe yes. And you gotta assign it to a coach, really, because like if a team that played in the first 6 years of NFL football probably actually holds the record for scoregami,
right.
But yeah, that's
yeah, all. I know.
Steven, I'm curious. I don't know if I'm stepping on your toes here, Daniel, but I would love to hear a little bit about your Saints fandom and the history of your, you know, being a Saints fan. If we have a minute to do that. So, because I really loved when Marcy shared that about the 49ers.
Yeah, well, thank you for asking. I grew up in New Orleans. The house we lived in was around the corner from Tulane Stadium, which is where the Saints played in those days. Actually went to 2 Super Bowls in that stadium, Super Bowl 4 and Super Bowl 9.
Wow.
Nice.
A ton of Saints games. My brother and I made money by helping people park in our driveway so they could walk to the game. My dad had season tickets to the Saints, and it was a huge part of our life. You know, we weren't a real sporty family, but we did go to a lot of Saints games, and they were terrible. And the Saints did not have a winning season for their first 20 years. They didn't play in a playoff game until their 25th year, and they didn't win a playoff game until 2001, which was 34 years after they started playing. You compare that to the Seahawks, who started in 76 and were in the league championship game in 83.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty short amount of time to build a championship team. The Saints did it a lot slower and in a very roundabout way. I mean, they fielded some really lousy teams that I got to watch play a lot. So as a result, having grown up with that, I'm very pessimistic and I don't ever expect them to win. But
I think a lot of Mariners fans can relate.
Absolutely. Yes. I think that there's a little similarity there, but it's a very deep bond with the team because you've been through so much. It's almost like the Stockholm syndrome or something. But what the picture behind me is my mom and dad and my son Aaron in New Orleans at the Superdome in 2012. We took Aaron to New Orleans to see what it was like there. He ate at a lot of great restaurants, and we went to the Saints Panthers game, which in true Saints fashion, they lost, and it got the playoffs that year, I believe. But it was a great thing. It's one of the things that I most enjoyed doing with my dad when he was alive was watching the Saints. We went to a couple games at the Seahawks stadium, which was called various things at various times, and it's it's just, I can't say it's important to me because objectively it's not important, but it's deeply meaningful to me anyway.
Yeah, I mean that's sports fandom.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean that's what I love about sports. It's completely meaningless and totally meaningful all at the same time.
Yeah,
and it has the ability to build community.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I will never forget watching the Saints win the Super Bowl.
That was a terrific game.
I mean, that
was a great game.
It was a great game.
One of the gutsiest calls too, coming out of halftime.
Like
that was just so stunning.
Yeah,
that was. There's been various times, as I have grown to become a diehard football fan and a diehard Seahawks fan, where I've jumped on the Saints bandwagon, and I think that even though Seattle found success quicker in the playoffs than the Saints have, the Seahawks were very much the total underdog team of the AFC West for many years, and until they jumped back into the NFC. And I remember back in the late 80s, early 90s, when Jim Mora took over for the Saints and Bobby Hebert was the quarterback. Like, I really and I think Sam Mills was the middle linebacker and stuff. Like, there was a lot of Saints football that I would just sort of start paying attention to, because it was fun to see them finally taste playoffs.
And at the same time, I was a big Seahawks fan. I mean, I started following the Seahawks when I knew I was moving to the Pacific Northwest in 1983, which was a great year to start following the Seahawks, right? Because they had a fantastic year. But yeah, I've always liked the Seahawks. And other than this anomaly that I'm still a Saints fan, I follow Seattle sports teams. I go to the Kraken games. I love the Mariners. My favorite team is the Storm, though.
Nice.
Yeah, well, you have a lot of like-minded fans there in this podcast. So
you mentioned the Mariners,
yeah, I know. We'll get into that. Let's quickly get through some predictions.
How'd we do last week?
So
how'd we all do last
Millie's
week?
not here, so I don't know I don't know the final scores. I can't remember what I did. I know I picked against them, and I know Curtis is the only one that said the Seahawks were going to pull this one out. So congratulations, Curtis.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody expected a shootout.
No,
that's what we got. A high
but I got
score
the
and
point
high
differential right.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I would have just said Seahawks by 3, I would have nailed it.
Yeah.
But that's not how we do things here, Curtis. We want
It is not. So Curtis, give me a score for Seahawks Saints. How is it going to go?
God, I actually have a weird feeling that it's going to be a offensive shootout between the two teams again, with a little bit better defense being played. I'm gonna be a homer again, and I'm gonna say that Geno Smith is the hot quarterback right now, and I think coming out of Detroit, that was a big confidence booster for the offense and maybe the defense a little bit, knowing that they've got that offense clicking. I'm going to say Seattle wins this one 31-27.
Yeah, I also think it's going to be a bit of a shootout. I think it's going to go a little bit like that Atlanta game did. I am predicting Seahawks because they're pretty good at these 10 a.m. road games under Carroll. And the Saints are going to have that London hangover. I'm going Seahawks 34, Saints 30. I think Geno's going to I think Geno's going to have himself a 4-touchdown game. That's what I think.
Nice.
Lana, what do you got?
The thing that really sticks out to me about this game is the circumstances around it, which are, as Stephen mentioned, 2 days of no practice. You've also got Kamara potentially out, Michael Thomas potentially out. What quarterback is going to be starting? And the ever enigmatic Taysom Hill kind of like hovering over everything, as well as the other factors for the Seahawks, which is that it's a 10 a.m. road game where you're right. Carroll has coached them up and figured out how to conquer that beast. I'm going to go with Seahawks in a blowout, and just kind of brutalizing that Saints defense. And Geno being the big star. Did they announce Offensive Player of the Week yet? Because I do think it's going to be Geno.
It's going to be tomorrow morning. I'm kind of leaning towards Geno maybe getting that this week.
Yeah, I think it's going to be 35-10 Seahawks.
Wow. The defense is going to step up. I mean, if Kamara's out, that will be huge because the Seahawks are terrible against the run.
Less defense steps up and more New Orleans can't do anything on offense.
The interesting thing about the Seahawks defense with the with against the Lions is up until that one busted run play, that big play that happened in the third quarter, they were actually holding the Lions offense, the run attempts, to a pretty decent, stat line.
Until it wasn't.
Steven,
what do you got?
Well, the one thing I didn't mention about the Saints this week is that Latavius Murray, who had a fantastic game for the Saints in London, got signed by the Broncos.
Right.
Man, that
Next day.
sucks.
So we don't know if we have Kamara. Mark Ingram's not looking too good, and Latavius Murray is now at the Broncos. So really, I'm going to pick the Saints anyway, just because the team is better than what they've played by such a vast distance. I just can't see that team being 1-4, and the Seahawks can be scored on. And the Saints defense is good. So I think the Saints will put together enough to win at home in a game that they really kind of have to win if they want to not be playing this season to get a top draft pick. So 26-24 Saints, and I won't be surprised if Alana's right.
Well, the frustrating thing about a team like the Seahawks in that version of the rebuild they are is they're definitely good enough to beat any team in the league, and they will also just lay an egg against even bad teams. It's just going to be one of those seasons where we'll go into Philly and just like take a game and then, lose against Baker Mayfield in Carolina. It's like, yeah.
I mean, you lost to Atlanta. Atlanta's bad enough.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Hey, Atlanta's tied in first in the NFC South. So like,
yeah, they could be the team this year that stuns everybody. I've got this weird feeling like in the NFC, we're going to see like a ton of 8 and 9 teams.
That's going to be so weird.
Like it's just going to, and like picking that final wild card spot is just going to have to come down to like, points scored and all kinds of like crazy tiebreakers.
Well, that plays into the Seahawks' favor because Seattle is the city of chaos ball.
It's true.
As the Mariners have proven, when on September 30th, they finally made it to the playoffs for the first time in 21 years. I mean, this was, Ichiro Suzuki was a rookie the last time.
Oh my God.
We were still in the Bush administration. The last time the Mariners made the playoffs. I mean, that game was wild. That crowd was loud and crazy. It was like the 21 years of pent up frustration like released into the air, and then in pure Mariners fashion they won it in a 2-1 game, which is a score that they've had I don't know, a number of times this season, but I mean, Cinderella story. Cal Raleigh gets the call up to pinch hit. Scott Service says, we're in our last out. We need a home run. He goes to Cal Raleigh. Cal Raleigh's done this before. He's been clutch for us before. He goes in. Pitch count is full, 3-2. He goes low, scoops up the ball, and just fires it into the stands. I've never seen anything like that. That is the kind of thing that tells me the Mariners are the team of destiny. That's like when stuff goes your way like that, it's the better to be lucky than good. That's what the Mariners are right now. I think they've just got that X factor, team of destiny. We're going all the way. Looks like we're going to be playing the Blue Jays in Toronto. I have a feeling they're going to take that series and they're going to face our nemesis, the Houston Astros. And if that happens, the Mariners will be America's team.
Oh,
yeah. I was so happy that Cal Raleigh was able to get that. Alana, you and I have talked throughout this pod, and all through our group chats this summer. Cal Raleigh has kind of been our favorite player of the team this year, and truly, maybe I know this might be a little sacrilegious, but maybe the MVP of the Mariners this season.
I don't think it's sacrilegious. I think that you just you got to recognize the whole contribution. Where, and the fact that he was able to play for the team and play a role for the team that supported and allowed Julio and Geno to do what they did, right? Like he's the is he second on the team in homers? Did he pass?
I think he might. I think he might have passed Julio. They're so close, so I'm not sure. I mean, you know, and Julio was out for a while.
Sure, but Raleigh doesn't play every game because he's a catcher. You know, so like I think when you look at the season stats, I'm guessing they played very similar number of games.
Yeah.
But at any rate, I just love his energy. I love the fact that Kelnick gave him the nickname Big Dumper, and he
best nickname in the league.
Yeah, and he was like, I guess I'm the Big Dumper now, and he's dopey. He's got that catcher dopiness, and like he calls a wonderful game. And he's the best in the league at throwing people out at second. He's the number one catcher in the league for home runs. If you redo this season, the All-Star vote, I think he's an All-Star.
Absolutely.
And I think that there's a real good chance that he'll be an All-Star next year. And I think we could send a triumvirate plus of Julio, Logan, and Cal, maybe Geno, maybe, you know, depending on how people have seasons. But he's got the right energy. He plays like a kid, you know, and when he hits a home run, it's beautiful. It's just a beautiful swing, a beautiful hit. And the energy that he had in that last moment was just magic. I also wanted to call out, I was in Portland and I watched a lot of the celebration because they had it on, I was at a McMenamin's, and I got to catch all of the Matthew Boyd interview. And like Matthew Boyd, for those who don't know, is a reliever on the Mariners that they traded for from the Giants midseason, who grew up in Seattle, who grew up rooting for this team. He has pictures of himself in the Kingdom with his dad at Safeco before they changed the name. And when they interviewed him, he couldn't hold it together. He was crying. He was weeping for the city of Seattle, and just how emotional it was for him to have followed this team and now to be a part of its success. It was a really big deal. It was really neat. And I also lastly wanted to say in that celebration that Scott Service was like the proud dad of Seattle.
Totally.
And it really, like, Stephen, you were mentioning something about how sports are like, why I feel that. I mean, like, not why I feel that way, but like, it doesn't matter. But when you have, like, I was here for when the Seahawks went to the Super Bowl all three times. I had lived here in 2005. But specifically in 2013, when it was like, oh, we're gonna win, and not everybody knows it. The fact that you would be walking down the street and every single person you saw would say, "Go Hawks, go Hawks, go Hawks," and seeing that again in 2014, and then now I'm getting the exact same feeling from people about the Mariners, and getting messages from friends who live out of the city about it, and it's really special. It's the type of thing that can bring a community together, and unfortunately, like, we're all artists here. It would be lovely if art could do the same thing to the same degree, but unfortunately it can't. It doesn't in our society because of how our society is structured. So having something like sports that can, I love it. And this team is so lovable. It's great. So yeah, my kid's starting to like baseball, and that is very surprising to me and super rad.
I think that's awesome. Were you watching the game, Stephen?
Yes, I went to the game the night before.
That's right.
Marathon, 11 innings, and I was watching, and my son was at the game. He was at both games. He's there again tonight. He was there last night. He spends most of his earnings from working in the kitchen at Aegis Living on going to Mariners games.
I love that.
He's very excited. You know, he was a baby the last time they went to the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it was special. And I have the same feeling about Cal Raleigh that you guys do. He's got such joy. I mean, watching him round third base and jump into his teammates' arms, you can't not tear up at a moment like that. It was glorious. So I mean, and there's a storytelling aspect to the season the Mariners have had that you would love to see on stage or in a movie?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to say about Cal Raleigh is he's a sniper when somebody is trying to steal second. Anytime I see a opposing team trying to steal second and Cal Raleigh's behind the plate, I know he's going out. Curtis, how does it feel?
It's exciting. It's been 21 freaking years since I've watched Mariners playoff baseball. It's almost kind of, it's jarring. It's almost like I'm about ready to get out of the state penitentiary, and go visit relatives that I haven't seen for like 21 years, see nephews that are married, and like all this sort of shit, right? It's like, I'm looking forward to Friday night turning on the television set and watching the Mariners play and beat the Blue Jays and take that series, because my mom was from beautiful, scenic British Columbia, from a large Catholic family. So there's like Reitmeyers all over the freaking provinces up there, which was my mother's maiden name. And they're all huge Blue Jay fans. And so on Facebook, they might have to block me.
Well, I'm just excited. I love summer is baseball to me, and I love going to the games live. And the past 20 years, when a team is bad, and I've explained this on the podcast before, but when you got a bad team, the way you get through those seasons is just moment to moment, game to game, right? You're not looking at the big picture. You're going to the game and saying, I hope we win this one, or at least if we don't, there's going to be a couple cool things that happen, right? And so that's just kind of what I'm used to the Mariners. And I'll go to half a dozen games during the summer and, while my summer's away at the ballpark, and that's fun. And then the summer's over and baseball's over for me. And then last season, we had some relevant baseball in September, and that was a little weird. I'm not used to watching baseball in September. And now we've got relevant baseball in October. And you guys, I don't know what to do with baseball when it's like dark and cold out. So
well, we're gonna have to learn, because it's gonna be here for a while.
That's right. It's gonna, and if they sign that core, if they, they need to lock up Kirby and Logan and Cal Raleigh, and hey, let's throw Suarez some money, and Castillo's already locked up, and we got Julio. I mean, this is a really,
maybe go
really,
get a
really
Trey
cool
Turner or an Aaron Judge.
That's right. Who just broke the home run record today?
Yeah.
So congratulations,
Who's
Aaron Judge.
now really close with Julio. Like,
I'm just saying, Dipoto, maybe, go out and
start spending that money we don't have.
That's right. Well, that's really fun, and I can't wait to talk about this next week. When we have some baseball to play. Shall we get some dorking?
Sure.
Dork out about some stuff.
I have tailored my dorking a little bit to the conversation we've just had.
Yeah. All right. Let's hear it. What are we dorking out about?
I don't know if y'all are familiar with John Boyce. He's a YouTube creator. He actually has a sports themed storytelling video pod called Dorktown. So I feel like he's in our wheelhouse. But he's got one on the time that the New Orleans Saints needed to win a game, the last game of the season, I believe against the Jets or the Jaguars, I can't remember when, and they ran a ridiculous Hail Mary, scored a touchdown before the game ended, and then missed the point after.
Oh God, I remember that.
There is a lovely radio call where the guy just goes, no, and just holds it. And Stephen, I'm sure you're familiar with it. But honestly, it's a beautiful bit of storytelling. It's from his series, Pretty Good, season 2, episode 1, and it's treating it as expressionist painting, treating this moment that they hold, and it's really just wonderful storytelling. Beth, my wife, loves this thing because it's just so well told. And then the other piece, which is similarly from John Boyes, and this is something that I believe should have won an Emmy, because it is one of the most magical, perfect pieces of media that I've ever seen. It's a series about the Seattle Mariners from Dorktown.
Yeah.
And it is about their origination all the way up to 2019, I think, 2020. It came out right at the start of the pandemic. It is a beautiful piece of storytelling. And it's called the overall thing is, I think it's just the history of the Seattle Mariners with the subtitle of the weirdest team in the history of sports. And it talks about Six Stadium. It talks about how so much of the initial start of the Mariners was just fucked up and weird. And it talks about all the colorful characters. My favorite moment of the entire thing is it's like we're getting done with the Griffey part. And then at the end, it's like you just see a hand holding the bottom of a bat. And it's like, oh shit, Ichiro. And then it just cuts into this little bit of storytelling where it's like, and then it turns out like a 21-year-old Ichiro met with Ken Griffey Jr. and they just loved each other and had a great time. And that influenced Ichiro to sign with the Mariners. And it's like all these, it's just beautiful storytelling. And I cannot recommend it enough. I have watched it now 3 times through. I might watch it again before the game on Friday, just because the Mariners have sucked so bad for so long. And but that doesn't mean that they're not worth rooting for, that they're not worth engaging with, that they're not worth believing in.
I mean, I think it makes it even stronger, right? I think that makes that bond even stronger.
Totally.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for the recommendation. I have to check that out, Alana.
You will love it, Daniel.
Where is it available? Where do you get it?
It's on YouTube. Yeah, just look for The History of the Seattle Mariners by Dorktown.
Aaron has made us watch the whole thing.
Has he? Yeah.
What do you think about it, Stephen?
A lot of it is a little much for me, but I understand why you love it, and it is, I mean, it is all about the Mariners. I mean, it goes into a lot of detail.
There's an entire episode about the Yankees Mariners series from '95. Yeah. It's just one episode that's just about that series.
That's excellent.
And that
does it start with the first failed bid of getting an MLB team in?
So there's a cold open that's all about the Seattle Pilots, and then it's like, this is the history of the Seattle Pilots, and then it's like, oops, nope. It skips ahead.
It's so Seattle to me. That whole history is so Seattle to me. We don't have enough time to get into it, but if you're listening to this pod and you don't know the history of the Seattle Pilots, Google it. There's going to be a ton of articles and stories about it, and I implore you to read it because it's just a fantastically weird tale. Yeah, we became the Milwaukee Brewers.
Almost.
My dad
almost immediately
up until his last breath hated the Milwaukee Brewers with passion.
The first episode is called "This Is Not an Endorsement of Arson."
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
I like it. Curtis, what are you dorking out about?
I guess the thing that I've been enjoying the most is a continuation of the Lord of the Rings show on the Amazon Prime stuff. Like each episode is about 70 minutes long and kind of feels like its own sort of movie. And it's got really good tension to it that I like. And I love the cinematography to it. Like I said in a previous podcast. I'm not the biggest Tolkien person in the world. I enjoyed the films from like 20 years ago to an extent. But they've been nothing that I've really revisited over the years, and I'm enjoying it. I started into the latest season of What We Do in the Shadows, and
It's
I
excellent.
love that show. That's
I
just
love
a
that
lot of
show.
fun. I really love Nandor. I'm sort of a Nandor.
And yeah, I'm an Andor guy.
I'm an Andor guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
I'm sorry, Laszlo is the greatest character on TV right now.
or Jackie Daytona.
I love that whole dynamic between the two of them. I think is great. And I'll just say that last week's episode of the She-Hulk I really enjoyed when she was in group therapy with a bunch of goobers. That was a fun episode. I've been sort of disappointed on the whole of the last season, this past year with the MCU. I feel like they've gotten their formula kind of out of whack.
I agree.
There used to be a really interesting balance between the weighty stuff and the levity, and now it's just sort of turning more and more into like yuck fest situation comedy that sometimes I feel is written by like 14-year-olds, especially that latest Thor movie. I feel like that I would have penned that when I was about 13, 14 years old and would have thought it was like hilarious.
I agree with you. I've been a little disappointed in the MCU the past probably year and a half or something like that. It just has lost its way a little bit. I think it might find its footing, but
I think it's going to find its footing with. Yeah, I enjoyed Hawkeye and Ms. Marvel, but I think that Wakanda Forever. I think that that's a group of people who take that story very seriously.
I'm looking forward to that.
And that new trailer has me really pretty excited about it. And
agreed.
I think that's going to be pretty. I think it's going to be really meaningful to a lot of people who aren't us.
Absolutely.
And I hope that we all make the cultural space for them to have that moment, and not Lizzo flute it or Black Mermaid it, because those things are important cultural milestones that a whole bunch of white people have really just shat all over.
Can we coin that term, Lizzo fluting it?
What was the deal with Lizzo and the flute?
She was offered the opportunity to play James Madison's crystal flute at the Library of Congress, because they have instruments in addition to books and movies and stuff. And she took that opportunity because she is a classically trained flautist and has been playing the flute for the majority of her life. And a whole bunch of neo-Nazis or white supremacists lost their collective minds, and were saying things like it's a travesty and she's violating like this ancient artifact that's important. And it's like all these people are reacting this way when they didn't even know the fucking thing existed. And you know who did was Lizzo, because she's a fucking classically trained flautist. And it was just a bunch of neckbeards who decided that Black women shouldn't be allowed to touch old white things. Like that was it. That was the summary of what happened. But it's made it on Fox News as being like a violation of something.
Right.
And it's like, would you listen to what she's playing and how she's treating this moment? Like, it is with ultimate reverence for this object and for this moment, and she's playing beautifully. Like,
yeah, I also love that, you know, Fox News is you know, working 24 hours on a story like Lizzo playing an old crystal flute, and meanwhile people are dying in Florida and a civil war is brewing in Iran, and you know, but this is what we're focusing on. Good job, guys. Yeah, good job. Steven, are you dorking out about anything?
Oh yes, I'm in the what I hope is the tail end of a, I don't know, 20-month dork session with the spelling bee puzzle that comes out every morning on the New York Times website.
Yeah.
Their time with that, but I do not really let my day begin until I find all the words in the spelling bee.
I know a lot of people who are in that ritual right now.
Yeah, it's better if you don't make it so important. Like a lot of things.
Can I tell you, when it first started going on, I was really busy, and this is totally the kind of thing that I know if I get into, it would become a daily ritual. And I saw all of my friends one by one, go down with it. And it reminded me a little bit of that Star Trek, The Next Generation episode where Riker brings that game on board that he got from his hookup in Risa. And it's like feeding everybody the addictive endorphins. And suddenly the entire ship is playing that stupid game, except Wesley Crusher. That's what I feel like a little bit, at least, like 6 months ago when it was doing its thing.
Right. I just can't seem to say that I'm done with it. I mean, I don't know. I started in January of 2021, and I still have to get all the words every day, or I can't get on with my day. So it's a mental illness. The other thing, I'm very excited about the beginning of hockey season. I think the Kraken playoffs
me too.
this year. I think
nice.
Really.
The
what do you think about Bowie?
No.
Oh, I love Bowie.
Good. I'm so glad someone.
I'm with Alana on that one. I dig Bowie.
I like Bowie too, and I was actually surprised that Bowie was getting some backlash. I think the three of us might be the only three in Seattle who actually like Bowie. So Bowie, if you want to come on this podcast, you're welcome to.
Bowie was Bowie's for kids.
Bowie is for kids. Yeah. Jenny thought that they should do Sea Hag instead of Bowie, and the Sea Hag could be a scary Sea Hag with a pitchfork who speared a shark when they play San Jose, or speared an octopus when they play the Flyers, because apparently
as long as the Sea Hag has like googly eyes like Gritty, I'd be into that.
Yeah, Sea Hag. When they get rid of Bowie, heard it here.
I don't know. I like Bowie.
Should be Laurence Olivier as Zeus in the original 1982 Clash of the
Titans,
where the Kraken gets Reese the Kraken.
Why not?
Yeah. I like the Kraken, and I think they've looked good in their exhibition games. I have I don't know. I think they're going to take a step forward this season. It's going to be fun. I can't wait. I finished Reservation Dogs. I watched the final episode. I've talked about it on this pod. I really enjoyed the second season. I love that show. I thought the penultimate episode was really affecting. I cried my eyes out in that last episode as well. Yeah. I thought they just really tied it together. Also, the character of Cheese has really came into focus in this second season. And I like it. That actor is doing a great job with that character, but the way they developed that character, and Willie Jack too, which were two, I guess they were like stars in the first season, but of that core group, they were kind of like, the secondary characters where they focus more on Bear and Laura Dannon. But Cheese
had never acted before.
Is that right?
Cheese never did.
Yeah, no, not prior to Reservation.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I
and Will
remember
Jack
hearing
as well.
that on NPR too. He is definitely he and Big and Willie Jack are probably like my three favorite.
Yeah.
And I love Spirit too, but yeah, Cheese is just so affecting. Yeah. He might only ever do that one role, but that's sensational. I love that show so much. I'm just so giddy that it's got a season 3. I get to watch it.
Me too. Yeah, excellent show that I think everybody should watch. That's all I got. Hey, if you're listening to this podcast, you should check out Curtis's blog, 12life.com. He's always got really good stuff on there. Really, really great stuff about Seahawks and the players and the coaches and some good predictions and stuff like that. If you like this podcast, you should hit that plus sign and follow us wherever you're following us. We're on Apple and Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts, we're on it. And if you don't find our podcast where you get it, let us know and we'll get on there. Once again, my name is Daniel. For Steven, Alana, Curtis, the rest of the 12s, Millie, we miss you. Saying goodbye. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Thanks. But